Welcome back to Oregon Public Retirement. I'm your host, Daniel Ryan, certified financial planner and IRS enrolled agent, as well as author of the book, Oregon Public Retirement. This is the financial planning playbook for Oregon public servants. Now, today we're going to be focusing in on the question, how do I actually calculate my pension? We're going to be focusing specifically on OPSRP members who are either in general service or police and fire. That being said, if you are in Tier 1 or Tier 2, please check the other videos that I've already made specifically for your circumstance, because you have things that OPSRP folks just don't have. Purchasing units and also being able to purchase back time and all of these other components that we just won't be spending time on in this video. That being said, let's get into it. So like I mentioned, today we are answering the question, how do I calculate my pension? What I'm referring to is that stream of income for life. That does not include your IAP or individual account program. It has nothing to do with your 457 or your 403B or IRAs or EPSAs or anything else. If that is all on that side of the table, those are all what we would consider lump sum dollar amounts. The pension, however, that is going to be a stream of income for life at retirement, and it's meant to effectively replace a good portion of your salary so that you can live confidently in retirement. Now, of course, for Oregon public servants, almost all of you pay into both Social Security and PERS, so you will have two pensions, really, one from the federal Social Security program and one from the state, which is the OPSRP pension, or Oregon Public Service Retirement Plan. If we first focus in on simplification of the pension process, it's going to have three factors if you're general service. It's going to be a factor of 1.5% times your years of creditable service. If you have 30 years of creditable service, which is typically 31 years of working, then we would multiply that by 1.5%. Well, for general service, that would get you 45% of your salary, which is the last component. Final average salary. I have a whole video dedicated to what is final average salary. But if you have 1.5% times 30, that's 45% of your final average salary. So hopefully that simplified the actual calculation process there for you. Now I'm going to switch gears here for a second to police and fire, who really only have one difference, and that's a factor of 1.8% times usually 25 years, but it gets you to the same net result, 45% of, once again, your final average salary, which again, I have another video completely dedicated to what is final average salary. Both police and fire and general service are trying to get to 45% of their income replaced for life. That just happens 5 years sooner for police and fire. And you also need to know, what about my normal retirement age? Let's say that you started at 22 years old and you're a teacher. Well, if you get to 30 years of service, you're only 52. And for OPSRP people, you actually have to be at least age 58 to retire with the calculation that I just gave you. They call that the normal retirement age for OPSRP people. That would be, again, 30 years of creditable service, and you have to be at least age 58. It's basically because PERS knows most people are living a lot longer, so they want to make sure that you don't start taking the pension any sooner than possible. So age 58 for general service. Now, if you are in police and fire, then you only have to have 25 years and also be at least age 53. So you get there a little bit faster again. If we go back to general service, what if you are age 58 and have 30 years of creditable service? Perfect. Now you can keep working past 30 years and continue to grow the pension. So if you worked at 22 and worked all the way to 58, you would have something like 35 or 36 years of creditable service. That'll keep boosting your pension because that increases the years of service multiplied by the 1.5%. Now, police and fire, you will need to retire from a police and fire position. You can't basically do 20 years in police and fire and then do the next 5 years as a general service. You actually have to retire from a police and fire qualified position. So what if I didn't get to 30 years? Well, if you're in general service, then you actually have a normal retirement age of age 65, which is pretty high. So what that usually looks like is that people might work for 5 years and then they need to take, 10 years off to be with their family or whatever the circumstance might be. Maybe they went to work in the private sector or what have you. They were fully vested, but then they came back later. Well, they didn't get to 30 years. And so if they wanted to retire at age 58, but they only have, let's say, 25 years of service or 28 years of service, well, unfortunately, you'll see penalties are involved with that process. And the soonest you can get to the pension at all as an OPSERP person with less than 30 years is age 55. So if you didn't get to 30 years, you could get a little bit at age 55. But the issue then becomes that you will have a massive penalty and it will reduce it by upwards of 70%. Well, that's huge reduction. So if you had a $10,000 a month pension, which most of you will not, then it would reduce it down to $3,000 per month. That's a huge cut. And that's because it's about 7% reduced every single year that you're not your normal retirement age. So if your normal retirement age is 65 because you have less than 30 years, but you took it as soon as age 55, it would be reduced by about 70%. If you can get to 30 years, that of course helps solve a lot of this problem. Maybe you get to 30 years at age 60. That's okay. Then you could still do the same thing. Like I said before, you would get 30 years and you'll be over age 58. So that all works just fine. And then we go back to the original calculation of 1.5% times 30 years. But the pension has nothing to do with sick time, your age. There's no account balance or all these other factors that tier 1 and tier 2 folks have. So I just like to make sure that OPSERP people know it is pretty straightforward. Of course, there's always complexities. Like I mentioned, what if I don't hit 30 years? What if I have mixed service, police and fire, and general service? Certainly, this gets complicated quickly. But for most of you who are just trying to do a simple track and you're saying, I'm going to work as a school teacher and I'm going to be on this path going forward, then it's usually pretty easy. Now, what about strategy? Well, a lot of people are curious about that final average salary. If you take the concept of your highest 36 or your highest 3 years that are consecutive for OPSERP people, or your last 36 months, that is effectively what creates your final average salary. I use extremes to illustrate this example, but what if I'm a school administrator for 3 years in a row? It'd really be 4 school years actually, because PERS is looking at calendar years. And then what if I go back to part-time teaching or something like that? Those would be huge extremes, and your last 36 months as a part-time employee would never be as high as a school administrator, for example. Well, in that case, they're going to go look at the school administrator salary that you had for 3 years. What if I had 1 year as a school administrator? Well, it will still increase the averages, but they might actually end up back on the last 36 months. PERS is going to look at both of those circumstances, and they're going to choose the higher of the two just for you. So you don't have to do the math to figure it out. But the question then becomes, well, Daniel, why do I need to do any of this right now? Maybe you're only 5 years into your career and you're thinking, I don't care about retirement. I'm just trying to make it day by day right now. And I totally get that. But if you don't know where you're going and when you can get to your pension, you have no idea if you're actually on track to accomplish your other goals. For example, a lot of people are trying to save for a house, or they're trying to save for retirement in a 403B or 457. The question of, well, how much should I save? Well, you have no idea because we haven't worked the backwards to forwards motion yet. So we have to get these things put into place, what I call retirement coordinates. Where's PERS, Social Security, Medicare, PERS health insurance program? Maybe you're going to sell a company or a rental property or something like that. We got to know where these things land so that we can then have the investments fill in the gaps. So that's the process of figuring out your pension. Certainly there are several other strategies with final average salary in particular. Again, check out that video. Or if you want to look more into my book, it can go through all these different variations of how to calculate that pension. What if I have a loss of membership status as a tier 2 person and I got rehired as an OPSERP person? There's so many different ways that this can go, but now at least at a high level, you can answer the question, how do I actually calculate my pension as an OPSERP member? Until next time, happy planning.